Coming up on this week's episode of the Rip City Roundtable podcast, we are going back to the well of the Blazers Edge Riders. Conor, Bergin is coming on the show. He was on our first episode covering the team. He writes featured articles amongst many other things that he does for Blazers Edge, but those are like the bread and butter for Conor. And this is an awesome piece that he put together, really covering the Rip City Remix, the Blazers G League affiliate. This is Portland's first year having its own G League team, which has been really cool. The sad part, good for the Remix, not great for the Blazers, is that a lot of players that have been playing for the main squad have been on this G League team. So if you've been lucky enough to go to games for the Remix this season, you've definitely gotten your fair share of NBA type players. I would venture to say probably at times, I don't know, there's probably 6 or 7 players on the main squad that have played for the Remix. I could be off. I totally did not do any homework here, but on that part of it. But the really cool piece, having Conor here to talk about it, he really goes in depth with the article. Also gives us a few angles that maybe did not make it into the article. So that was really cool to kind of hear those things, because you don't get it on the article, you get it here on the podcast. So really fun. We dive into a John Hollinger article that John Hollinger put out. Conor chatted about that on the website, Blazers Edge, got his thoughts on it. What do you do with tanking teams, pretty much, right? Do you let them just keep going to the bottom, or do you figure out a solution to make the sport a little bit more entertaining? I think Conor and I came up with a pretty cool idea. It's not original, so we're not claiming it necessarily, but I think it's worth trying. Maybe the NBA roll the dice and give it a try. So that's really fun. So thanks for listening, tuning in. This will be a great episode, and we will be right back after break with Conor to talk about all the things going on Blazers and his featured piece. So don't go anywhere. All right, everybody, we're back from break with, and I'm going to use a term from this article, this featured piece you did, Conor, Blazers legend, Conor Bergin, on the podcast. How are you doing, Conor?
Good, thank you. It's good to be back. My second appearance on the pod. So
Second
first
appearance.
first one, with some jitters, but I feel better this time. So excited.
Yeah. Well, since your first episode with Rip City Roundtable, you've been on the Joe Rogan pod, you've been with Bill Simmons, you've done no, okay, maybe not yet, but you're getting there.
Yeah, no, I'm my goal is to make like the rounds of all the Blazers podcasts, like making like
Yeah.
the late night show rounds of like I want to
Yeah.
get on Brandon's We Have a Take. I want to get on Jack Ramsey's. So yeah,
Yes,
hopefully.
it's like the junket. You're just moving around all the
Mhm.
Blazers pods.
Yep.
Well, good deal. We're glad to have you back. As mentioned before, you write for the Blazers Edge, you cover games, you do the previews for games, you do the post analysis and recaps and things like that. But one of the really cool aspects of what you do are these featured pieces, Conor. And I know they take a lot of time, right? They're just more effort. You're interviewing people, you're really putting good content together. The last one we talked about was about the what was it, the shoe shop? There are not shoes, but they do merch. Wasn't that
Mhm.
it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like a vintage basketball shop with a bunch of merchandise.
Yeah. I actually now I follow them on Instagram and I just get all their videos now. So thank you for that, Conor.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. All right, dude. Well, we're gonna jump in. Before we do your featured article, you had, and I think this is really fascinating. You had dropped something on Blazers Edge back on April 7th. So, this was like yesterday as we're recording this on April 8th. That John Hollinger had suggested kind of a crazy idea of something that could help with this whole bottom teams are tanking, not competitive basketball, that kind of take. Walk me through this John Hollinger article that he did that you talked about.
Yeah, it's an interesting article. I just like, wrote up a quick little like aggregation of it, but he he just talks about, and he's been covering this all year, where like the it started off like the bottom three teams in the NBA this season have been just like beyond bad, like historically bad, with like the Blazers, Wizards, and Pistons. And then since the All-Star break, it's extended to like the bottom eight teams now are just all free falling and trying to free fall, as Blazers fans know all too well because we've done it for the last three seasons.
Yeah.
So he was just saying like this is a league problem. It's a perception issue. Like the NBA is not going to like this. Fans aren't going to like this, and it's messing up the product because on a given night, like four of these teams are playing. Um, so he was trying to think of ideas to fix it, and I think people have kicked around some ideas like this for a while now. But he gave a minor solution and a bolder solution. And the minor solution was that you do away with the buyout market. So like teams, like contenders will just wait for like decent role players to just be bought out after the trade deadline, and then they can just pick them up without having to give up any assets in return.
Okay.
Uh, so he thought that would like kind of force contenders, one, to give up stuff and not just like get players for free, and
Yeah.
then two, it would incentivize some of these tanking teams to hold on to those guys a little bit more, if
Mm.
they can't just buy them out. And then the bolder solution was, he called it the delete eight, and he referenced the Orlando bubble when they just kicked out eight teams, or they didn't even invite eight teams.
Oh,
Uh,
you're right. They didn't even get to
mm,
go to Orlando, did they?
yep,
Yeah.
yep. And he was like, we should just do that at the end of each season, like not shutting down these teams, but just casting them aside to their own little division where they just play each other for a month. And it doesn't like contaminate like the Boston Celtics product, or whatever.
Yeah.
And they can keep losing, or so that was his idea. I don't. I'm curious what you think about it. I like just right away. I was like, I don't think financially the NBA would ever do something that drastic, but it's definitely it starts like turning the wheels a little bit about this issue.
Yeah, it does, and I'm glad there's like thought put into this because you want the best product on the court, but this is what happens when you incentivize also teams to lose that have really nothing to gain from that season. So it's like I might as well improve my lottery odd chances as opposed to being like the seventh worst team in the league. Like that just doesn't make any sense. Like the NBA is just it's too tough to make runs in the playoffs because of the 7 game series model. If it was like a March Madness type thing, I think there could be some teams that would be like, heck, man, if we just make it in the playoffs, maybe we could make a title run. But the NBA, you just can't, you just don't see it as often. So, uh, my question, and maybe you can help me answer this. So, if they took out the bottom 8 teams and they played in their own delete 8 bracket, so then there still are regular season games happening. So the best teams are all just playing, or the top what would that be? 14 teams. I guess I'm doing the math quickly here. No,
22,
20,
22.
22. Sorry, yeah, 22. They just all playing each other. So they just take out the bottom teams, and then these 22 top 22 teams, they like redo the schedule or something.
Yeah, yeah. So it's like it's kind of like a beast, like to think about, like just how, and they would have to do it on the fly. Like what if a team got like, what if there were two teams that were vying for that last spot to not get relegated to this delete eight? Like you would have to make a schedule like right, like that within a week with all, or to redo it all. So like it seems like logistically like it would be a lot. Um,
Yeah.
I don't know if like NBA schedule makers are up for the task to like in like
Yeah.
NBA arenas, like out of there, that's worked in with all other kinds of schedules. So I can't tell just like by looking at it if it's like a kind of like a fairyland like idea, like just like a dream concept of how you could fix it, or if this is something the NBA could actually like put the work on and do. Um,
Yeah. I I without putting too much brain power into it, I would say keep keep it how it is. I like the trying to think of something new, and but I do think at the end of the day, you'd have to like rework the lottery system too, because there's always going to be teams that are like trying to lose games to improve their odds there. And I think just by making a bottom eight or a delete eight, and then the 22 top teams, you're still going to have teams that are like incentivized to say, well, even if I'm in the bottom league, I'm dropping out. And it takes away, like, I don't know about you, Connor. I have kind of enjoyed, well, I'm glad that the Spurs haven't shut Wimbenyama down and Victor just keeps playing. And it's kind of fun to see him against these good teams because clearly the Spurs are bad this year. But it's been entertaining to see him like basically one man show and like take or like apply a ton of pressure on these better teams. And they're like, and he's actually it's creating some fun environments where like normally you look at a Spurs record and on the top of my head they're probably like 18 and 60 or whatever they are. But
mhm.
like each game now, like I pay attention to the spreads a lot and stuff like that. And like there was a game last night against Philadelphia where Philadelphia was shorthanded, but the Spurs were like plus 6.5. And I'm like, dude, put my money on the Spurs. Like they ended up not covering because they lost in double overtime, but the Spurs are like competitive. And I think it's because they're like throwing Victor out there just to see what he could do, which I think is fun. And if you take, and I know that's like one specific example, and there's not many Wimbenyamas ever. So, but if you take that out, you don't get these kind of fun like David versus Goliath type matchups.
Yeah, and the piece actually talked about the Spurs out of the bottom eight, they're like the only ones keeping it respectable right now. And it's because Wimbenyama is starting to really, I think, come into like he's really just starting to come into his own. I think there was some stat where it's like the teams were like 14 and like 130 or something like that against the other top 22. They just had like a 17% winning percentage, and the
Oh,
Spurs
wow.
have I think seven of those since,
Oh,
and this is since
geez.
the All Star break. So yeah, like, and it is fun to see Scoot go up against like top tier teams. And the thing that I can't like wrap around is like if you were gonna tell like a fan base like, oh, the Lakers and LeBron aren't gonna come to your city for the last like month, or like any like prime all stars are gonna come to your city for the last month. Um, just
Yeah.
like I would imagine the ticket prices would, or like the ticket sales would just tank even further if you don't have premier teams showing up for that long.
Okay, let me throw this at you. I know I'm trying to like skim Hollinger's article real quick, and maybe he mentions it. Let's say you do the delete eight. What if the winner got the number one pick? So like you remove the bottom eight teams, but then now instead of losing, it's like whoever wants this number one pick, who's the best, whoever has the best record. And now it's like flipping the mentality of like, oh shoot, now we got to win these games. Would that work?
I think it would make it definitely more of a, if you're worried about like product and entertainment, that would probably solve that. I did see somebody pitch that idea in the Blazers Edge comment section, and I was
Okay.
like, wow, I was like, that's a great idea. And then somebody immediately underneath it was like, that makes no sense. Like, would these players play hard so that the team could draft their replacement? Which I was like, well, that's an like, I don't know if that would directly affect.
I don't think that would affect. I think players in the NBA, they want to play. Like I think it's so hard for a player to like pull back their effort when they're playing. And I think it's management that typically intentionally like comes up with injuries for star players, or they just want to play the young guys more minutes, and then your team just naturally starts losing a bunch of games because you're young. So I say throw the young guys out there because wouldn't I would think, use our example for the Blazers. Like you take Scoot, I know like Tamani's hurt. Yeah, like Chris and Dewap and these players that are like younger or like rookies. Wouldn't they want to play with another young guy? Like I know Dewap Reith might say, okay, I might be replaced if we get the number one pick. But ideally, like most of the young guys would want to build a better team around so that they have a better chance to win.
Yeah, I think they would be amped actually. Yeah, because they don't want to keep, being like 15 and 65 or whatever. So yeah, and I think yeah, if you did like the playoffs for the number one pick, it would kind of be like a play-in situation, but just like reversed, just in the back. And I think the play-in has been awesome. Which the article talks about how like the play-in has fixed tanking, like in a lot of ways. Like it's not as widespread as it was. Um, but now like it hasn't fixed like this last month for like the bottom teams. So it just kind of shows like I don't know if they'll ever get like a perfect strategy because it seems like when you solve one problem, another problem is going to pop up.
Yeah. I say try this, delete 8 and then tournament for the number one pick. And then if you lose the title game, you get the second pick. And then maybe there's a third, fourth place game. And that's the third, fourth pick. And then I think you try that and just see what happens. And it's like, and then if it doesn't fix it, go back to what you currently do. But
Yeah,
it hasn't, I don't know. Okay, Connor.
I
We,
think
we heard it.
I think it.
We heard it here.
Yeah. Name it after me. Name the tournament.
The Connor delete 8 bracket.
Sans or shout out hat tip John Hollinger too because it was
Yeah,
originally taken from his article.
we'll give John Hollinger a little bit of credit there. But well, Connor, if Portland was in that delete 8, which of course we are this season, there would be a fan base that probably would care a little bit about this because a lot of the players that would be on that Blazers team will have been in the G League that year. And I am talking about Hand Fruit Nation.
Yes,
Connor.
shout out Hand Fruit Nation.
Shout out Hand Fruit Nation. So this was the piece that you just finished writing. It's an awesome article. Go to blazersedge.com. Came out April 4th. The definitive history of the Rip City remixes Hand Fruit Nation. I'm gonna admit, Connor, like this has been a long season. Okay, so it's just to keep up with everything coming out. It's hard. I didn't see your article when it dropped, so I apologize. You sent it to me, said, "Hey, let's talk about it." I read the title of it and I had no idea what you were going to talk about. and I was like, "What?" So then I get into it and it's really cool. So I'm going to let you kind of talk to me about, how this article came about. Why did you pick the Rip City remix to talk about? And then talk to me about this fan base that call themselves Hand Fruit Nation.
Yeah, and your response kind of reminds me of my mom's response because I told her when I was writing it, I was like, Mom, I think like this piece is like gonna like do decent. Like I think like it might get some attention and just like be like a good piece. And she at the time was like, oh yeah, of course. And then afterwards she was like, when you said that, I was like, what are you like? I don't really think so. Like, I don't know. Like hand fruit. I don't know what like this is gonna like, draw a lot of readers like you think it might. So yeah, just on the surface, yeah, it's exactly what the fan base is, or like the joke of the fan base is like, what the hell is hand fruit? So yeah, I'll explain. I now this article did take a lot of a lot of research, more than I expected to do about hand fruit. So like that definitive history thing, I think when I put that on, like I felt it was earned. Like this is from the beginning, the start of this fan base and like the interactions that led to it forming. So the story begins. It goes back to the remix home opener, and Eric Peterson, who's a big Blazers fan, on Blazers Twitter, and he's actually doing a G League podcast this season. There's just he noticed at the concessions menu at the remix game there was an item called hand fruit, and that's what it was called on the menu, $2, and he just sent out a tweet that was like, you can get hand fruit at the remix game, and the responses, like, people were kind of just laughing at the strangeness of the term and like, what does hand fruit mean? So it just was kind of like a bit, and he doubled down on it. And like at the next game, ordered it and like reported back like it was an orange today, and people were like, and he said why, he was like, that begs the question, like, if it was an orange, like, why don't they just call it orange? And I didn't put this in the article, but somebody commented like, maybe the hand fruit rotates each game, which
Oh
is
my gosh.
exactly what it is. So it's just any like portable fruit, like personal fruit that you get, like a banana, pear, apple. And so from that tweet, like, people on Blazers Twitter just sort of kind of like joking about it, referring to like hand fruit. Uh, and then the next game, next weekend, this guy Brady Sieg, who I interviewed, he didn't know Eric, but he saw the tweet, thought it was funny, so he just like customized a shirt online, and it said, "I'm here for the hand fruit." And
Oh, that's
he
so
showed up
good.
at the game, took a photo with it, and from there it just kind of spiraled into just being like the joke of like the fan base, like Hand Fruit Nation. I think Sieg actually like said the term underneath the photo. And it just sort of kind of became like the unofficial mascot of like the diehard remix fans, which, like, there isn't like a ton, but like there is a season ticket holder section. So just from that like kind of spontaneous thing on Twitter, it just kind of kept going and started getting like the attention of more people on Blazers Twitter.
It's hilarious and just awesome. I mean, like, is this now, I wonder if we're expecting when next season tips off. I mean, will there be an orange as the mascot or like an apple running around with like teeth marks in it or something? Or what do you think is going to start happening as far as a
I
mascot goes?
I wonder if the team will like go in, or sorry, will buy into it more, because they the remix people, they liked it a lot. I interviewed John Jensen, who's the director of ticketing, um, and he talked about how they started this year, and it's pretty interesting. Like, it kind of had a startup mentality, is what he said people were saying about them, because it's the remix business operations, like they're their own entity within the Blazers. So like he said, there's 7 full-time workers and then like a handful of interns. So it's pretty small.
Well, wait,
Um,
okay, well, hold on. So but it's owned by the Blazers organization, right? Or like,
yep,
okay,
yep.
but it's
And
treated as their own deal. Like,
yeah, like
they're not pulling staff from the Trailblazers. They have
yeah,
their
like I
own
don't think a
team.
ton of staff, like they'll definitely pull resources, of course, but yeah, like he said like there's 4 kind of main people. Um, him, like the team president, like 2 others. And it's kind of just like those 4, he said, like talking in an office, and the main decisions kind of come from there. So it is like a pretty small operation that they have going, and they were looking for ways to kind of build the brand this season, because I don't know if you would know, but like the team started, they normally like even a G League franchise takes like 2 seasons, I think, to like be up and running, and they did it in like something like 6 months or something like that.
Yeah.
uh, so he's told me like their initial goal just was to be operational, which I thought was a funny line he said. Because I was just like, dang, like they really
Does
were
that
just, let's just get this up.
does that mean, like, when you say operational, it's like the lights are on, the players
Yeah,
show up, the away
yeah.
team is
I was
there.
like, man, like, yeah, you guys were just like, yeah, like starting, just going really fast.
Oh
Like,
my gosh, that is
yeah.
so funny. What did and I know you mentioned this here about, I was curious how much the tickets cost, but then wasn't there a part of this where they like got a t-shirt and was it hand fruit or something with it, or was I wrong about that? I'm trying to remember
No,
that
you're
part.
right. You're right. It at the end of the season they did Blazers Twitter, like the main hand fruit people. They okay. Well, I guess I have to explain. Kaylee Harden, she runs the basketball shop Basket Ghoul. It's like an e-commerce site that does pretty funny, cool Blazers designs, like stickers, sweatshirts, and shirts and stuff. She is Peterson's girlfriend and just like a remix fan and Blazers fan. So she was tapped into the whole hand fruit thing. And a month after they kind of started, she made a shirt with a cartoon apple on it, and it said Hand Fruit Nation, and it became like the shirt. Like if you wanted to join Hand Fruit Nation, you bought a shirt from Basket Ghoul with the smiling apple on it. It is a cool design too. I got one because I went to the game. But
Yeah,
and at the
I'm looking at it right now. This is a cool shirt for sure. I like it.
yeah, and she uh Blazers Twitter, they got together. There's like a really close community on Blazers Twitter that like not only talks on Twitter but tries to meet in person. Um, Seth Morgan helps run that. I talked to him. He's the same sheriff of Portland on Twitter. But they
Mm.
all met up for and I know I'm taking a long time to answer your question, but I'm getting to the answer.
No, get there. You're fine. Take us on the journey, Connor. We're on the
so,
journey.
so they all organized the meeting for the Dame's return game. When
Okay.
he came back with the Bucks, and there was a photo on Twitter of all of them uh, at the arena, and they were trying to do that one more time with the Blazers Twitter community, and a lot of people had been saying they wanted to go to the remix games, but hadn't done it yet. So they organized this idea. Seth and Kaylee did that they would call it the Hand Fruit Nation Summit, and it was the season finale weekend for the remix. This was the end of March, and if you showed up or if you bought a ticket through them, you would pay $30 total, but you'd get a Hand Fruit Nation shirt. It was a new design, and then that a, a bleacher seat on the baseline. So, and they were like the bleacher seat is $10, so they sold that at face value for $10, and then her shirts are normally $30, but that was $20. So like they weren't trying to like make a bunch of money off this. Like they were just trying to get people together. And they bought tickets from the remix to resell them for the event, but like the remix were helping them out, and they were like, oh, if you don't sell like as much as you thought, like we'll refund you. Like so I
Nice.
thought that was cool of the remix. Like and they have embraced them. They started putting in their like marketing and everything, like Camper Nation. So maybe there will be a mascot next year. But
I'm thinking there will, and I mean, there's already the beginning of one on the shirt here, so I
yeah, you
could
just need an
I
apple.
see it. Yeah, I just need an apple. Need an apple. That's all you need.
Mm-hmm. So yeah,
Very cool.
that was the event. They ordered 20 tickets. They ended up selling 60.
Wow.
So that's the photo in the article is that baseline bleacher section that they all reserved, and they thought they could have got more, but they didn't want people outside of the bleachers. They wanted them together.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was just for that game, and then you got to shoot free throws afterwards. If you went, it was a cool. I had not been to the remix games yet. Um, but it definitely made me want to go again next year. Like it's a lot chiller, like of an atmosphere, but you I didn't realize just how athletic like borderline NBA players are.
Mm.
The pace was like super fast, super physical. You saw how tall Moses Brown was. You got to see Ashton Hagens play. Like there was an alley oop like right in front of us. It was for like paying $10 to be courtside. It was a pretty cool thing, and the concessions are all like hand fruit $2, but there's also like beers are like $8. It's not like professional sports stadium prices, so
Yeah, where you're
that
paying
is
like
also nice.
$14 or something for a beer. Tell me, and you bring up the menu. I was gonna go back to it, but I didn't know. I'm gonna ask you, what is a walking taco? Am I just
Yeah,
Am I dumb or what is that?
No, I actually was wondering. I was like, man, Walking Taco is this close to great. Like maybe in a parallel universe, Walking Taco is the food that got all the attention and that sparked the fan base. But yeah, Walking Taco, I think it's $7. It's just like a bag, I think, of Doritos with like like taco meat in it. I did not buy one,
Oh,
but
okay.
John Jensen told me that Tumani Kamara gets it when he goes, and it's Tumani's favorite thing to eat.
That's Tumani's deal is the walking
Yeah,
taco. Oh my gosh. Okay, so you saw the Santa Cruz. They're playing Santa Cruz, right? That was the
yep.
game that you went to. Was anybody on that squad a guy that's been in the NBA this season that you were watching on their
Man,
team? Is that the Warriors affiliate,
yep,
right?
yep. They're maybe I thought I might have seen man, I'm already forgetting his name. It's like Gyotza or something like
Oh
or
yeah. I know who you're talking. I'd probably destroy this name too, but I know who you're talking about.
yeah, that was
I was curious if they had people because the Warriors, right, are in the mix here for a
mhm.
play, obviously a play in, but for the playoffs. So some of their youngsters, they may be like, nah, just get some run with the G League team, as opposed to our team, like our normal G League team, half of them are on the Trailblazers right now. So
Yeah, I was
you
actually
just
surprised that Ashton Higgins and Moses Brown played because they had been with the team like all of that week. Well, they'd been with the Blazers all of that week. But they
yeah.
jumped on the play.
Ashton just seems like a guy, and Moses might be this way too. But Ashton just seems like a dude where he's like, you call him up, hey man, you want to go play? Yeah, I'll go play. Like I think that guy never puts a ball down. Like I think he is just go 1000%. Is just my
Mm.
perception of watching him play.
I get that too. He's intense. I think there's been a few times this season where he's like flexing, and I think like the other like it's in games against teams that are like way better, than the Blazers, and I can almost feel like the other teams like, dude, like why are you trying so hard right now? But yeah, that's just like I mean that's how he's gonna make it is just being
Yeah,
that intense.
yeah, being that intense. Uh, okay, I just figured out a question I want to ask you. Every time you come on here and we talk about a featured article that you've done, featured piece, I have a question. I don't know if it'll be its own segment, but I want to ask this every single time. Okay. It is what did you leave out of this featured piece that you now are like, I should have kept it in? Or was there something that was like right on the fringe? Maybe you couldn't weave it in, or maybe it didn't make sense with the article. But was there anything that was like
Oh
close
man,
to make what would be it?
for sure. This could have been like 6,000 words.
Oh, jeez.
That was because I did like I did like four main interviews that were each like an hour basically, with like the main people. And yeah, I could have gone into so much more of like the different like into the people's backstories. Like one thing, Kaylee, like she I her sorry, okay. I know what I'm gonna say. Her background was interesting, because like she was not even a Blazers fan or a sports fan up until like 5 years ago.
Okay.
Uh, and she she called herself. She was like, I was just a goth kid from Florida, and like goth kids don't really like sports. I thought that was a funny quote. And then like she ended up just going to a Blazers game with Eric in 2019, and it was a Damian Lillard game, and she like remembered the exact date, and from there just like the flip switched, or the switch flipped, and she just like got super into the Blazers all of a sudden. I mean, like I just thought it was crazy after going from not liking sports up until like your late 30s or sorry, late 20s, and then all of a sudden you now like operate a shop that you make sports designs and sports clothing. And now she's like a huge part of like this whole hand fruit nation, like this weird, like goofy sports fan base. Like she's one of like the main people who got it going. So that was one thing. Uh, but yeah, like I said, I was really trying to make sure it didn't get overblown. Uh, there there was a lot of things I had to work into this article. Like I had to explain what Blazers Twitter was, which like sounds easy, but like throwing that in with it, I wanted to explain the Blazers or the remix side of like their kind of startup, like what they were doing this season to like get the brand going. Like a lot of that got cut. Um, Seth Morgan. I'll tell you the last thing that got cut was Seth, sheriff of Portland, had this line where he was talking about like all it takes is like a little bit of effort, uh, and like you can like find community or like get something of value. And he said like, and yes, something can as silly as Hand Fruit Nation can have value because everybody digs it. And I thought that everybody digs it line was so awesome. I actually initially I had it in the headline. It was like the definitive history of Hand Fruit Nation. Everybody digs it, and that quote was in there, but it just didn't work. Uh, I could like it was already long. There wasn't like a natural spot to put it in, so I ended up taking it out. But that was the last thing that I took out of the whole article. So
Connor, that's awesome. I think we're gonna keep this as a segment every time you come on, like Connor's leftovers or Connor's what's on the cutting room floor. I don't know what the terms are, but I appreciate that stuff. I know, well, I don't know because I've never written a featured piece, but I know there's probably so much that goes into it, and at the end of the day, you have to hone it into the important stuff or the things that are kind of at top of mind with it. And so I'm assuming there's probably always some really good nuggets or fruit that get cut out of these. So
hand fruit. I see.
hand fruit. There you go. I mean, so just quickly at the top of my head, if I were to name hand fruits, it's banana, orange, apple. What is there
Yeah.
another big one I'm missing that like people
Um,
love? What am I missing? A pear?
a
Or
pear
no?
that's actually been a hand fruit.
Okay.
Um, those are I think the main ones. You know, it can't maybe a kiwi, but like that's kind of weird because I don't think you really. It's hard to
Yeah,
eat. It's hard to eat kiwi without like a fork. Uh,
that'd be
there's
tough.
there's talk about like because the piece talked about how the Hanford Nation was inspired by the pickles a little bit, the Portland pickles,
Oh yeah.
and there's a debate going on within the ranks of hand fruit nation of is a pickle a hand fruit. And I learned recently that something has seeds on the inside, it is a fruit. uh,
Oh, interesting.
which
I,
I don't know, do pickles even have seeds? They probably do. So I think that
they,
would make a pickle of a hand fruit technically.
I think as this evolves, there needs to be like dueling hand fruits at every game where it's like the bananas versus the oranges and they're like kind of fighting, but they're still together in the common cause of
different different
Rip City Remix.
factions
Yeah, different
factions of
factions and
fruit.
yeah, they're like yelling at each other across the court and just random stuff. So well, cool, Connor. Okay, I'm gonna ask you one other question before you go. Uh I prepped you this time, so you had some time to think about it. We can't have you on the show unless we talk about current events, the current season, and which we're almost at the end here. Thank the Lord, we're almost at the end. But my one question for you. So I'm gonna compare. I'm gonna use the 2019 Trailblazers team that made it to the Western Conference Finals. Sadly, got swept by a KD less Warriors, but that's for another time. If you had to take one player from this current team this season, and I don't, they can be hurt, healthy, two-way contract, I don't care as long as they've played this season for the Blazers, and put them on the 2019 squad. You don't have to remove anybody, so let's not get too technical. You can just place them on that team. And who would that be that would have given that team the best chance to win the title that year?
I think it's got to be Jeremy Grant probably because looking at those teams, like the weak links, sadly, where it was all I love Mo Harkless and Al-Farouq Aminu, but it was always kind of like the Blazers need a better forward who can consistently shoot and knock down shots when Dame or CJ are getting all the attention. And Jeremy Grant would be the perfect guy to be a spot up shooter when the defense is helping off them or to go get a bucket in isolation situations, like Aminu and Mo. I feel like for like 4 years, our whole fan base got used to just like praying when they would be open and get the ball that they could knock down the three. So yeah, my answer would be Grant.
I love that answer. I think I was leaning towards Aiton a little bit just because we had lost Nurk that year, and I think Ennis Cantor like
Oh, I
did
was
the
thinking. Sorry to cut you off, but I was thinking
yeah.
Nurk was healthy and playing. I guess. I mean, yeah, but if you could sub in Aiden for Cantor, that might be the easy
I
move
think I
right
think
there.
that would have been the title. I think the title would have been in our hands if we had DA instead of Cantor. Well, yeah, in a world where Nurk doesn't get hurt, that would have been a very interesting outcome for sure. Because man, Cantor, although played his heart out, he needed to be coming off the bench, not starting in all those games.
For sure.
But anyway, all right. But I like Grant though too. I mean, you have Jeremy on those teams. Oh man, a great defender and another scorer. It kind of amazes me that we got through OKC and Denver with just Dame and CJ because really that's what it was. I mean, there was not really a third scoring option unless Cantor was like grabbing offensive rebounds and putting them back or something. But well, crazy. All right, dude. Well, Connor, thank you so much. Your second go around with the Rip City Roundtable podcast. We appreciate you coming on the show, dude. Thanks for doing it.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on.
No problem. Anything else coming up? Are you working on another piece right now, or because the season's about to end, are you going to Cabo? What are you doing?
Dude, I'm metaphorically going to Cabo. I that hand fruit piece was because I've been working 2 jobs this season.
Yeah.
And that hand fruit piece was like my capstone for the year. And I was like one final push. And then it's the off season. You can like kind of refuel a little bit. So that was kind of I'll still do like some regular coverage to round out the season. But yeah, that was the last big one.
I love it. Well, you did a great job. Everybody that's listening, go to blazersedge.com, check out the piece. Portland finally having its own G League team, which is incredible. The community in Portland is loving it, and Conor doing a great job of covering it. So we appreciate you, man.
Sweet. Thanks, dude.
All right, that's it. That was this week's episode. You made it through it. You did it. I hope you enjoyed Conor. He again, wealth of knowledge, great, good guy, puts a lot into his craft, and an amazing piece again written about the G League and Hand Fruit Nation. Portland, we would have a fan base called Hand Fruit Nation. Get your hand fruit. We promote healthy eating on this podcast. So get your fruit, your oranges, your apples, your bananas, all the things. We want you to be healthy, stay safe, and remember, it is a great day to be a Blazer.